Xal'atath smashed the Titans' plan. This is how Midnight ends. So the last time we saw Zally Mommy and her beautiful bare feet, she went to the straight into the ground, right? She went directly through the Sunwell, or it was the Void Well at that time, soon to be the Dawnwell, right into it. Looks like, and she was going with a bunch of those Voidy boys with her too. So it looks like they're going into the void, the core, right? The core way. I don't know where the hell they were going, but they're going, it looks like, to the World Soul to do whatever they want to do to it. This is supposed to jabate the Titans out. We already know this because Iridikron, the whole reason why he teamed up with Xal'atath was he said her plan's going to bait the Titans out. So it looks like the master baiter plan from Xal'atath worked. And the Titans are going to be baited out. And this plan right here is about to come to fruition. Let's see what Belilar has to say about how the Titans being baited out is finally going to end Midnight and kick off the last Titan. Here we go.
Sponsored by Squarespace. Where's WoW's story going? What does it mean for content? And how are Blizzard going to pull all of this stuff together? That's what I'll be dealing with today. And really, what they're doing is quite ambitious. Some may even say a little bit insane. They've effectively looked at the state of Azeroth from the end of Legion, and for the most part, decided to continue the story from there, to pick up where Legion left off. Obviously, BFA happened, Shadowlands happened, was a bit of a disaster, and Dragonflight also happened, even though it was a little bit of a nothing burger.
Yeah, Shadowlands happened, but it's kind of been retconned a little bit, just a little bit. I'm sure Metzen fucking hates Shadowlands. I've said that before. I think he fucking hates that expansion. He can't believe that shit went down.
And things from those expansions will be
how do I
locked
fix
in.
this shit?
But by and large, it's basically time to forget the bad stuff and smash all of the good stuff into a bridge spanning from the moment the Titans left us at the end of Legion until the moment that Xal'atath blew Dalaran out of the sky. The big question is, what happens then? And what Blizzard have set up is Aman'Thul and the Return of the Titans. That's what's going on in The Last Titan, which is the final expansion of this trilogy.
Yep.
But to get there, we of course need Xal'atath. We need to know where she's going. And where she's going is quite simply the World Core. Now you might be wondering what the hell a World Core is, and why suddenly everyone's talking about it. And of course, where the hell Illyria and Turalyon went.
Yeah, I think they also
I'll
went
answer
there.
you straight up. The World Core is, more likely than not, the location of Midnight Patch 12.2, and what it is for sure is the topic of today's video. It has deep roots in the lore, which you'll learn all about today, but from our perspective, it primarily kicked off whenever Sylvanas stepped out of the Shadowlands to land an aimed shot on Xal'atath at the end of the Sunwell raid.
Yeah, she missed though.
So we see the arrow hit, we then literally watch Xal'atath just dip out of the conversation. Quite literally. And if you look closely, you see that she disappeared into the Darkwell.
Yeah.
And if you look even more closely, looks like a whole bunch of devouring host minions are also being shot down that energy beam into the dark.
Is Sylvanas like forever stuck in RP walk mode? She must have locked in backslash on her keyboard and she doesn't know how to undo it. She just RP walks everywhere now. That's just her thing, like shadowy footsteps and monologuing. That's her favorite thing to do these days. Sylvanas' return was definitely a prelude to Shadowlands retcon, essentially, or Shadowlands reveal. Where the Titans basically created that shit and all that stuff is a Titan creation, way too orderly for an afterlife. We'll get into that lore. Maybe that's a post-Midnight thing. I have no idea. But right now, it does make sense that the way he described it, 12.2 could be we're at the World Soul patch. It looks like 12.1 is going to be an Amani Troll patch, which is kind of like a little diversion from the story and then back into the story, which is fine with me. I'm excited for some Amani Troll content. But 12.2, yes, certainly could be the World Soul patch.
Well, now in a way you could look at that and think, okay, well Xal'atath got one of her balls pierced and then she ran away. Clearly we won.
What?
That's not actually the case, and it's firmly established in the lore that it isn't the case. Xal'atath got what she wanted.
On purpose.
Iridikron, another being who you'll learn about today, who she's working with, got what he wanted. And as for us, well, we kind of played our part in helping her get there. Now, where do I mean whenever I say there? Well, quite simply, to the World Core. And if you were wondering what happened to Illyria and Turalyon after the Void Spire, well, chances are they got shot down that same big energy beam and are now in and around the World Core.
Yeah.
What is the World Core? Well, it is a place the Titans built to keep the rest of us out and to keep whatever's inside firmly hidden and away from our reach. So, it's time to explore what I think is the end boss of big Titan facility raids. Probably the end boss of any of those we'll have in World of Warcraft. We've done our Ultimans, our Ulduars, so many others, but I think the World Core will be the largest one. And to make sense of it all, we have a mountain of legitimately cool modern lore to uncover. So let's get to it.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
I've noticed a lot of people who need a website don't have one, or they have
Man,
one.
do you guys remember, I think it was in the War Within art book. In the War Within art book, there was some images of like the Azeroth World Soul, like unreleased. Basically, it never came to fruition, and it was because the World Soul saga was all supposed to happen in the War Within expansion. So like there were images of like a sleeping giant in the planet that we were going to see at some point, but we never did because they basically, Metzen came in and expanded that War Within expansion into a saga. And it looks like we're going to finally get that part where we were supposed to see the World Soul. Now I got to go in here and dig in and try to find that image again because it was cool. I remember it. If I can find it, I'll bring it up on the screen. But there was essentially like a sleeping woman, and you were like around her in the World Soul. I need to find it though. Also Squarespace.
Bellular Gaming, and then when you're ready to go live, use code Bellular Gaming, and that'll get you 10% off your first purchase of a site or domain. First things first, let's do a post-battle debrief. As much as the elves are happy about their new Darkwell, what this whole escapade actually was a massive strategic defeat for the peoples of Azeroth. Illyria and Turalyon, two of Xal'atath's most powerful adversaries, were sucked into the Darkwell, and we did save many from the Voidspire, Anduin, Faerun, and Velen, but many more are missing. Travert and the Tearsguard are missing, as one example. The Sunwalkers are missing. Delis Moonfang, who is a Loon Paladin, is also missing. Argent Veteran Grayson Shadowbreaker's missing, along with nearly the entirety of the Light's Vanguard. Yes, they're all quite literally MIA right now. And to remind ourselves just how bad that was, we only need to look at Lorthamar's dialogue in between the two raids, where it's very clear that he's basically left with nothing in military terms. And that is, of course, why the various elven tribes thing was, well, basically supposed to be a desperate gamble, the last resort.
Right,
Still,
uniting
though,
the elves.
in that moment of utter defeat.
By the way, a lot of people think it's weird that he decided to unite the elves, or at least make an attempt to unite the elves after basically centuries, hundreds of years of them just not getting along, and he thought that's a better choice than going to ask the Horde for help. Because the Horde, their entire army's not there. So he was like, I could go ask the Horde for help, or I could try to do the impossible and unite the elves. Yeah, we'll just do that. We'll just go for that. A lot of people still think, why the fuck did he do that? Why are the Hordes so not involved today?
It took the return of Sylvanas to save the day. Now that's something Xal'atath
especially the Night Elves, right? The Night Elves literally banished them. They would have been the hardest ones to pull in. And yeah, he was able to do that. Fuck going to the Horde, though.
She actually hasn't accounted for. But come on, it's Zal. It's not like she can't handle it. Instead, she resummoned her shoulder shiny and disappeared into the Darkwell. That's proof that whatever's down there was more important than finishing off the last cowering remnant of the elven people. That's what I imagine Xal'atath was thinking at the time anyways.
Right.
Now look, maybe it is just some loose storytelling from Blizzard, but either way, Xal'atath left, and she left to go somewhere in particular. And our first major clue in-game comes from Umbric and Ramath. They have a little chat, and while they talk, they drop a bit of a breadcrumb. After the cinematic is done, the elves are reunited, and the Darkwell is turned into the Dawnwell, we get two very impactful stay a while and listen scenes, and each one sets up the next stage of the story. So first, there's the one between Ramath and Umbric. They're having a chat about the new Dawnwell whenever Umbric, ever the Void Genius...
The Dawnwell, too, was an alright thing. I like the lore right now. I like where Midnight's going overall. I think it's heading in the right direction. I like the overall, where the World Soul Saga is going so far. Midnight is better than the War Within, story-wise, for sure. And it seems to be going the right direction. The whole Dawnwell thing, though, like, let's all find some old shit and put it in the Void Well and see if it works, and it worked. Oh, and the power of friendship and a little bit of dusting light on that thing. That whole thing was like, it was okay. It was okay. Probably the weakest part of Midnight's lore so far. But overall, I'm still good with it. And I think it's still going, it's still heading in the right direction.
Points out that Xal'atath, well, actually went somewhere. Specifically, here's the quote directly from him.
This new Dawnwell is a fitting tribute to our unity.
Doc in the chat says, "Did I miss the cinematic where all the female elves get naked and jump into the Dawnwell?" No, that was on Moonguard. That was not a cinematic. That was a server event on Moonguard. You missed that one.
Though, learning to live without the Sunwell's power may take some getting used to.
Perhaps. Far more concerning to me is the Darkwell.
It's no longer a threat to any.
They were moving down through it, Ramath. You saw. Thousands upon thousands of void monstrosities, all headed deep underground.
See, only came.
I saw. What could Xal'atath be seeking at the heart of the world?
Whatever it is, she used us to get to it. I fear her true invasion is only just beginning.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too good. Now, Ramath wonders what Xal'atath could possibly want or be doing at the heart of the world.
Yeah, it seems like some of the player or the NPC characters are still pretty oblivious to the whole world soul concept. Because I feel like it should be pretty evident to them at this point that, yeah, she's going for the world soul. Hello. Yeah, you still haven't realized that yet. That's why she went to the planet. But us as the player characters, we know that.
You have to remember here that Ramath was not in Khazalgar whenever, of course, we were in the War Within. And that means that he didn't discover all the things that we discovered when we were there. The big one being, of course, the World Core. Now, I'll talk about Khazalgar to explain all that stuff in a minute, but for now, let's just stay laser-focused on Midnight's campaign. The second stay a while and listen is with Arator and Liadrin. And whilst Arator doesn't think to ask what just happened with his parents, and while we do need to put a lot of this together ourselves, he does at least set up whatever is at the other side of the Dawnwell. You see, Liadrin describes what she felt when she prayed to the Sunwell, and she says she heard a voice that told her not to be afraid, and that she heard music in her heart. Now, Arator asks if that could be the World Soul's voice, and if Azeroth could have used the light to reach out. Now, where it gets interesting is a Redditor called Neodrim.
I wonder, though, if that means that the World Soul is replacing the light in the Sunwell. Like, the light is not what's empowering it anymore. It's the World Soul. We've already seen this happen. We see it all happen in Dragonflight, where the dragons themselves used to be empowered by the Titans. That's where they got their powers from. And then they lose them, and then when they regain them, the powers are actually granted to them that time around by Azeroth. So that's changed how they get their power source. I wonder if this Dawnwell is the same thing, where it's not really a light source anymore, but a World Soul source.
Pointed out that the Radiant Song can quite literally be heard all over the place, especially whenever Liadrin
Dawn
marches
does give
from
that
the
Azerite
Sunwell
light.
with
It
the
does.
Army of Light. You'll also find it in the War Within login music. It rises up in many impactful moments. It's in the Vault of Memories, and now it's playing in the Sunwell. That's pretty cool. It's nice to see the music team cook, but it's also telling us something very important. It's telling us the Dawnwell is a connection to Azeroth. Now, that's hardly surprising. The Sunwell always was that, and that's something I'll come back to later in this video. But now that we're confident where Xal'atath is, where she's heading, the World Core, let's see how this story was actually built in-game. And let's just connect all the different dots so you just get it in one story.
Let's connect them.
Back during Dragonflight, Xal'atath used the big baddies of that expansion, the Primal Incarnates, to claim the Darkheart. Now, the Darkheart was basically just a magical amulet that's a bit of a prototype for another really important magical amulet
Well, Xal'atath has this thing that actually works out really well for her. It's a typical trope that she has, where she looks for the downtrodden, right? The abused, the neglected, the forgotten, and she uses them to get what she wants. So we saw it with the Incarnates, who lost their fight with the Dragon Boys, right? And they got imprisoned. We saw it with the Nerubians, who were like a withering society, previously great, no longer so great. She came along, promised them greatness, abandoned them after she got what she wanted from them. We saw it with the Ethereals, right? A people who, were once a great society, got fucked up by the void, and now they kind of just like nomads wandering around looking for somewhere to settle. And Salhadar had his fucking issues leading, and she kind of showed up, promised them greatness, and then abandoned them. So that's where you got to kind of look, like who is Xal'atath going to pick up next as her next ally to help her get shit done? It's the downtrodden, whoever the fuck has been abandoned by society, whoever considers themselves to be kind of on the outskirts looking in. You could say the Amani trolls could have been, but it looks like they're not so downtrodden or outcasts anymore.
Servant, we have a realm
Mad
to
Nana,
destroy.
thank you for the follow. Welcome to our Scourge. So it's an interesting kind of trope that keeps revealing itself over and over again with who Xal'atath gets help from.
The past of WoW's lore. You don't really need to worry about that too much. Basically, what you need to know is it could store a shitload of power, so Xal'atath wanted it so she could slurp up a shitload of power to use later. Now, before Iridikron handed the Darkheart over to Xal'atath, he told us what he actually got from his deal with her. And it's quite simple. It's that Xal'atath will be able to use the Darkheart to rip Azeroth from the Titan's grasp, and that when they return to reclaim their prize, Iridikron will be waiting to take his shot at them. But of course, we saw this deal go down not in a major patch, but actually in a minor patch. The following major patch was Mirdrasil and the Emerald Dream.
Yeah.
It ended up blooming. We defended it from Farak, who was basically just a massive distraction, like quite literally, so we beat him up. And now we see that the branches of Mirdrasil, working rather like an antenna, have flooded the planet's surface with a radiant song. Now that radiant song is the same thing that Thrall and Anduin heard in Xal'atath. It's what Khadgar has also heard, Bran has heard it, and well, by now all sorts of people have heard it. But what's most important is actually someone who recognized it. That someone is Locust Walker. He was Illyria's mentor, and he told us that song is a warning. And that's because back in his homeworld of Koresh, well, Koresh sang a similar radiant song right before Dimensius came to devour it. So essentially, Azeroth has been crying out for help. Every major figure on the planet essentially heard the same thing in and around the same time. That's, of course, not particularly normal, and at the start of...
There's some interesting points in chat, Arcadus. You know who's good at fighting the Void? The Trolls. The Trolls were always effective at fighting the Void. And he says, anyone directly connected to Azeroth is good at fighting the Void because of Azeroth's free will / spirit. Kind of true, yeah. I mean, right now we got Magni on the screen, right? He's what's known as a Thragar, which is essentially an earthen that has been pulled away from the Titan's grasp and kind of given a free will, as you say, from Azeroth. So Azeroth has basically, taken them over, given them free will, this and that, and they become this diamond form version of themselves. Probably good at fighting the Void. Yeah, trolls have always been very much in touch with nature. They're very naturistic. They're very in touch with the spirit and the Loas and all that shit. So yeah, they probably are closer to Azeroth than, say, maybe the High Elves would have been in their cities and everything else. So yeah, good at fighting the Void for sure.
War within, Magni hears this and he thinks it's Azeroth. But then, whenever he tries to hook back up to the Titan's consoles to have a bit of a chat, we see that he's actually blasted back with the sheer energy that's coming from the planet's core. So something's different, something's up. And it seems clear that this intelligence at the heart of our world is larger and way more powerful than any World Soul related stuff we experienced in, say, the Battle for Azeroth expansion.
Right.
Now the Radiant Song's message really was clear. It was pointing us to Kaz Algar. So, of course, we teleported Dalaran there, and we found ourselves a forgotten earthen colony.
Mistake.
We were right in the middle of the ocean. But of course, Xal'atath immediately sprung her trap, she downed Dalaran, and she clogged something known as the Coreway with debris. Now, we were told that it would take years to clear the debris that had blocked the Coreway. And that's a real important bit of lore when we combine it with other things we learned, like, as an example, where the Coreway leads to. And that is where the character of Dagran steps in. Along with Speaker Brinth, he discovered a stash of Titan discs recorded by the Keeper.
Yeah, where the hell's Dagran been this expansion? I don't... Have we seen him? Is he hanging out with the Delve people in Silvermoon? Where's this guy at? He had all this good Titan lore and shit, and he just kind of disappeared.
Cadus. And this was our
research?
very first mention of the word World Core. And it was also the next step in a Titan conspiracy that we have been following ever since Wrath of the Lich King. Let's dive into Arcadis' messages then. So he begins with a little bit of background, and his creator, Khaz'goroth, explains it. That basically, to create order from the chaos of the cosmos, that the Titans were searching for something called the Prime World Soul. Of course, they'd already been finding world souls, but with the rising pressures of the Fel, all those nasty demons, and of course Sargeras, and the Void on top of that, they basically realized they needed to find something magnitudes more powerful if they were not going to be defeated.
Right.
As it turns out, they soon did. They found Azeroth, but they sensed corruption within the world. Now, Arcadis was sent, along with the other keepers, to wage war against that corruption, and that is what led to the imprisonment of the Old Gods, because, well, the Old Gods were the corruption. Now, with that war won, the Titans then began what they call the Acclamation. Now, the Acclamation is basically them turning the
Titan
world soul
facilities
into whatever it is that they want.
Yeah, this is going to be like what the last Titan's about. That's why we're going back to Northrend. There's so much of this shit over there. So we're going to do a lot of that. Probably Dagran, as you guys are telling me, he was at Turellian and Illyria's wedding and Blood Ties. We haven't seen him since then. Really? What? Turellian, we saw him the entire expansion in the War Within. Anyways, that whole thing with him exploring the Titan facilities and everything, I feel like in the last Titan expansion, because that's what we're going to be doing a lot of, he's going to become very relevant. Because he's probably right now just doing more digging and research and all that. He's probably still in Dornogal. If I had to guess, he's over there just doing research and shit.
So to do this, they created a series of installations called the Manifold. I know, it's almost sounding a little bit like a Halo lore video, but trust me, it isn't. This is Warcraft. So the Manifold is a series of installations across the planet, and you've been to many of them. At the Manifold's pinnacle, we have the Forge of Wills, located in Ulduar, and designed to order Azeroth's mind. Then, in Uldum, we have the Forge of Origination. It's designed to shape her body into that of a Titan. So just think about the scale of all of this stuff. Essentially one forge to order her mind, another to shape her body, and in that we see a clear ambition from the Titans. It is to build a god, to essentially wake up the strongest Titan in existence, to have it be on their side and grant them ultimate victory against all the threats that they face. So then, we got all these Titan machines all over the world. But the next step was to build something called the Coreway. Now, the Coreway would be a direct path to the World Soul. Basically.
The core dildo. Just a giant dildo into the world soul. Let's just call it what it is, boys. That's what it is. The Titans are fucking Azeroth. That's right.
A really big hole, and it existed so that the Titans could study Azeroth. And that is the thing that we see built around the city of Dornogal. Now, I know that's quite a lot, but the good news is you've now got the lay of the land, so that means we can really go into the story. So here's the key bit from the recordings of Arcadis. Even with the old gods imprisoned, Khaz'goroth says that their influence still leached into the World Soul.
Right.
So he commands Arcadis and his Earthen to build the World Core. The World Core is, in his own words, quote, "There the World Soul will slumber with only the Titans to influence her." So basically, there it is. The World Core is at the center of all of this Titan machinery. This machinery forms a whole big system that is designed to protect Azeroth from all but the Titan's influence.
Right.
Which means it's not just some random crazy energy down there. It is a literal being. And with the Darkwell, Xal'atath just got access to her. That is, in fact, precisely why Xal'atath...
She got past all the Titan facility shit and was able to get in there. Now, who else did? Turellian and Illyria, looks like. They freaking went through that shit, too. So they're in there. They got blasted down when that whole void freaking well opened in the first place. So they're down there, and we're probably going to see them again when we go down there.
Built the whole Void Spire.
So it's a placenta?
All of that in mind, then,
kind of.
What's inside the World Core? What is Azeroth? Who is she? We adventured a lot in the Dragonflight expansion, and when we did, we discovered that Azeroth was once a being of immense power that basically crafted the whole world that we live on. But one day, of course, the old gods attacked, and when they did, she had to retreat to the heart of the world. There, she slept, and she struggled against the corrupting influence of the old gods. Now here's where things get interesting, because from Dragonflight through to now, we really didn't know much detail about like where she went, what she did. But with Midnight, that's actually changed. So we know that she created this place, and we now call this place the Cradle of Ulm. So that's basically where she retreated to. Now, we also learned that the Haranir were...
She also created amazing music for her zone. She really did. Chef's kiss on that music. It's good.
...drawn to the cradle by Azeroth's song. But here's where it gets a little more interesting. Throughout the Harandar questing, we discover that the Haranir were not directly called...
Doc says in chat, I think she wants to be a Titan and replace the world. So you talk about Xal'atath? Yeah, I think she does. I think maybe not necessarily be a Titan, but be immortal like a Titan. I've talked about this a couple times now. Her cinematic was Salhadar, where she reveals her like origin story and her motivations. Her motivation is essentially to live forever. Just to always live on, right? Get to immortality, essentially. And the Titans are immortal. Now, how do you become a Titan? I don't know if there's a path to that. We've kind of heard the stories of a world soul being able to become a Titan. So maybe she wants to infuse her soul, which she clearly can do. I mean, right now, her current form, as baddie as it is, it's not her real body. That's a void elf that she took over. So she has the ability to like take over a body. Maybe she tries to take over the world soul, and that's how she gets to immortality. I've talked about that being maybe her endgame.
...by their goddess. Rather, what they heard was just the echoes.
Step 1, achieve immortality. Step 2, and then step 3, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. She's just going to live forever.
...of her song.
I don't know if she has a
now,
plan
their
after
goddess
that.
is called Alanhara, and we've basically now learned that Alanhara is a pre-Titan name for Azeroth. But unfortunately, well, Azeroth had already been kidnapped. She was taken from the cradle. That's one of the most important story beats we learned throughout the Harandar questing. So she was taken from the cradle. She was likely taken from it by Arcadis in the deep past, and then put into the World Core. What then remained turned into the Rift of Uln, an area that gets hijacked by the old gods to create the Emerald Nightmare, and if during Legion you wondered who the hell Uln was, well, we now know it was once part of Azeroth's name. And that means that every time we felt the influence of our world soul, from say the Earth Mother saving the Horde in Warcraft 3, to Magni's travels with an intelligence below, and now the Radiant Song, it has all been coming from this one place called the World Core.
Yeah.
Now with that said, let's go back to the Sunwell. So, the High Elves were once masters of the arcane, and they founded Quell...
So Xal'atath will be the last Titan. If her plan works, yes. Now, there's that whole thing that she could be the last Titan. There's the whole thing about Sargeras being the last Titan. So, or we kill them all, and, turns out, okay, they were the last Titans, right? Okay, maybe. I know, that title is going to play at some point for us. There's a couple ways it could go.
The last because it lay on a powerful nexus of various different ley lines. Now, ley lines are basically just the cables joining the manifold together, joining all of these Titan machines together, right? It was carved by Titan-created giants, it was fueled by the blood of the World Soul herself, and it was quite literally powering everything from the World Core to Ulduar to Ul'dum. Now, whenever the High Elves seeded the Sunwell with a vial of water from the Well of Eternity, they were basically creating a well of World Soul energy. Just World Soul energy on tap. And they did all of this on top.
Hey, that's kind of what I just talked about with the Dawnwell is. Right? It's almost like it's not, it's less light though and more World Soul energy than the old one was.
Of an immense network of World Soul ley lines. Basically, they kind of hot-wired their well into all the Titans' machinery, just unknowingly. And that's where the Xal'atath stuff comes in. You see,
it's almost like you pre-watched Jesus Christ. I come up with a great fucking idea, and then I get that shit. Unreal. Unfucking real, man. What a great theory I came up with, and now the fucking pre-watch accusations begin. Jesus.
And then blocked the core way up. But the problem is, she needed so much more than just an entrance to the Coreway. She also needed her devouring host to make a connection from Voidstorm to Azeroth. Why? Well, because that would give her a bloody big army, which would really come in handy. After all, we can assume the World Core is packed full of just layers of Titan defenses. Remember, the World Core is designed to let no one but the Titans in. Xal'atath is not a Titan. So basically, she needed to get a way in that would bypass all of that nonsense, and to get a way in that nobody else could easily follow. So what she did is she corrupted the one part of the manifold that was infected by the light. That, of course, being the Sunwell. And when it became the Darkwell, she found her entrance. But of course, she was not the only one making that trip.
Right.
We know Xal'atath isn't the only one down there. First, I'd put money on a particularly gnarly group of Haranir being there, maybe secret even to their cousins. That's because when the Haranir first discovered Alanhara was gone, some of them set out in search of her. And over the years, Harati like Orwena have heard the call and they've left Harandar. That's why we met her in the War Within. So chances are there'll be some Haranir down there. Second, we may even find some Thragar. You've probably not heard that name before, but it does come from the Arcadis like Titan did.
Who the hell hasn't heard of the Thragar yet? Maybe you haven't watched any Samiccus lore videos. Yeah, they're a big thing. They're basically the Earthen, they're Earthen are Titan slave creations basically. But when they get free will from Azeroth, they become Thragar, these diamond crusty boys.
Records that I mentioned earlier. So the Thragar are crystallized earthen beings who were given free will by the World Soul. Now, to explain that to you, we know that the Earthen on the surface are the same ones who built the World Core, but we also learned that the World Core's influence forced their keepers to deactivate them or to just wipe their memory. And we know that some of them turned into a crystalline form and basically launched a rebellion.
Yeah.
That rebellion was put down in the deep past.
Some of you guys might be like, well, why doesn't Azeroth just give all the Earthen free will? Well, they kind of have it now. But, why didn't she just turn all of them into Thragar? Well, evidently, whatever prison she was in was like kind of holding her power back. She couldn't really get to the surface. The ones who became Thragar were the ones who dug into the planet. And they dug so deep at some point that Azeroth was finally able to influence them. And that was how they would become Thragar. If you remember the original, what's it called? The first time we see a Thragar, right, was, Magni Bronzebeard. Right? Magni's down there and he goes under Ironforge. And gets, I guess, close enough to Azeroth that he becomes a Thragar as well. So it fits that whole lore trope where you dig deep enough, Azeroth was able to influence them finally. Some people say, what if Azeroth influenced the old gods to give humans and gnomes and dwarves free will? Right? Because supposedly that came from the old gods, right? The curse of flesh. I call it the gift of flesh because it gave us free will. But the curse of flesh was given to us by the old gods. The old gods were burrowed into the planet. What if the old gods got so close to the world soul that Azeroth was able to influence them, essentially taking, again, Titan creations, which is what the humans and the dwarves and the gnomes were, giving them free will? What if they were part of her plan? What if the old gods were part of Azeroth's plan? I don't know. Kind of crazy theory, though.
Some Thragar will appear down there. And if anyone's going to give us the fine details of the Titans' plans for Azeroth, it's going to be them. But there's yet more people still down there, because of course there's the Vanguard of the Light. There's also Illyria and Turalian. All of that gathered might from the beginning of this expansion is basically down there right now. Just that by the time we catch up, likely in patch 12.2, they won't have the light-blind rage coming from the Sunwell. They might actually be solid allies. We can maybe think of them as a bit of a pocket army, one ready to rally against Xal'atath in her final gambit for the World Soul. And with all that said, the World Core and all the people in it are now set up for you. Which begs the obvious question, what'll happen from here? Well, honestly, I think that's also quite clear. Xal'atath needs to pull off the mother of all distractions just to get more time. Now, perhaps that'll begin with some of the patch 12.05 Void assaults.
Yeah.
Of course, we know that many of those assaults are led by cultists who actually feel burned by Xal'atath, but hey, a distraction is a distraction. The tempo will certainly build, though, in patch 12.1. We're fairly sure that it's going to involve the location of an ancient Cathaxi general, basically a big old god general, that is buried beneath Zalaman.
Yeah,
I'm
excited to go there. Isle of
I
Fangs.
think it'll tie into the big mystery island that's going on with the trolls. And once we've cleared that, well, the next step will be reaching the World Core. And with the recently cleansed Dawnwell, that's actually almost certainly our way in. And that is exactly what a Ridicron is waiting for.
Yes.
Because once Xal'atath reaches the World Soul, she breaks her way through the World Core, then she'll be able to do whatever the hell it is that she wants. Maybe consume Azeroth, maybe merge with Azeroth, who the hell knows. But what it won't be is good for the Titans. That is going to force the Titans to come back to defend their prize, which is, of course, exactly when a Ridicron will try to shoot his shot.
That's
I know
right.
we've covered a gargantuan amount of lore in this video. It spans so many different expansions, but basically, this is the best I think we've been able to get it in just a single video. Now, if you want to know where we're going next, and you want to sort of understand all this weird Troll Island stuff and how it could all tie in and actually be pretty damn cool, well, quite simply, watch this video next.
Yeah, great video overall. I agree with a lot of this stuff. Magni didn't turn into Diamond because of Azeroth. He's done a ritual by himself, you bald spot Canadian beaver. Well, Anarian, to that I would say, what if Azeroth influenced him to do the ritual? He had dug down beneath Ironforge, right? So it could have very well been, whispers of Azeroth telling him to do this ritual because she knew what it would do to him. Not true. Bitch, don't come at me with that shit. Fucking garbage-ass lore that you're trying to throw my way. No, I definitely think it was. I think it was, Azeroth. You gotta remember, Ironforge itself is in a fucking mountain. It's in the ground, okay? So, fucking, for all we know, she could have been influencing him long before he ever went under Ironforge and did his little ritual. Yeah. He did it to protect Khazmodan, and yeah. It doesn't mean that he couldn't have been told to do the ritual. Yeah. Copium. Yeah. We'll see. Anyways, I think the lore is going in the right direction. I think it's cool. Azeroth influencing people, the Titans influencing people, the old gods influencing people, maybe through Azeroth, who knows, but a lot of shit will get revealed to us soon, and probably by the end of Midnight and into the last Titan. Nice video overall from Bellular.